There are people who think AI can do anything, like the hype men, and are like, it's going to
Yes.
revolutionize everything and it can do everything all by itself, and we just throw an LLM at it and it solves every problem. There's the people who don't think AI can do anything, and like LLMs are useless, like lying machines or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's the people who are actually like building things using AI tools, who have a real sense of which things they could do and which things they cannot do. So this article is
Hmm.
basically like Salesforce finds out that AI cannot do everything reliably. And sometimes, if, for example, if you want to send a customer satisfaction survey 100% of the time, you maybe shouldn't have an LLM decide that. You should just code that into the system, which is
Yeah.
like, yeah, like as a software engineer, you're read like, yeah, that, yes, if you want a very simple deterministic thing to happen, you should just make that happen and not ask an LLM to do it and spend $2 on the amount of tokens that it takes to decide that. Like that's logical. Yep, that all checks out. But apparently, like it got a pretty violent reaction from the other two categories of people who believe they can do
Believe that
everything.
LLMs can do everything. Yeah.
Yes, it's like you wouldn't expect a human person to push the send a survey button every single time. That seems silly, and sometimes they
No.
might forget. Why would you expect the LLM to do that? You could just make the system do that. Like that's silly. So
As somebody who worked customer service, I did not need to click a button at Amazon to
yes,
have it send a survey every single time I closed a case. They did that automatically.
yeah. So that's why I was like, well, why did you not do that in the first place? Like, that's
Right.
a stupid idea.
Yeah. It's like,
news.
you've already done that. You did it already. And then you took it away. And then you're like, maybe we shouldn't have taken that away. And it's like, you think?
Anyway, so yeah,
anyways.
so that's why it was a very you think article. But like that is, I think, interesting in itself that there are a lot of people for whom just get the LLM to do everything is the intuitive way to do it, who are surprised when you're like, actually, that's silly, and you should just have the system do it in a normal way.
Right.
Hello and welcome to the Fast and Broken podcast, where we take a critical look at the fast-moving world of tech and online culture. I'm Carly Rector, a software engineer and startup founder who actually took a couple weeks off of work and am coming back refreshed for the new year, and it's very exciting.
Yay! And I'm Teresa Kramer, an MBA student, project manager, and semi-professional voice actor who just got back from the snowy colds of Minnesota, where I got my yearly dose of snow because we don't get snow that much here in Seattle.
Yeah, it's been a while since we got any.
It has been a minute. I will say, like, there was a blizzard the day before I flew back, so I got sufficient amount of winter weather.
Yes, I'm from California, so my yearly allotment of snow is 0, so I'm okay with it. But yeah, first episode of the new year, exciting. I picked topics for today, at least a couple of the topics that are sort of 2026 outlook topics. A bunch of people I follow are doing their 2026 predictions or
yes.
And some of these are 2026 prediction related. So the first topic will be about 2026 IPOs. In particular, both Anthropic and OpenAI they have not said anything about it, but there's been reporting that both of them are planning IPOs towards the end of 2026 or early 2027. And then we're going to talk a little bit about AI as an issue in the midterms, the 2026 midterm congressional elections, and some stuff that's happening there already. And then the last section, I have just been thinking lately about how some of the work that I did at Amazon affects how I think about capitalism. And I'm going to make you listen to me talk about that for a while.
Yes, sounds good.
Stuff about Amazon retail systems and what they were like in the year 2007 also. So yeah, that should be fun. So IPOs. So I should say up front that both Anthropic and OpenAI's official word is we're not planning any IPOs officially right now. We're really focused on building our products. We definitely haven't set a date because we're not even thinking about it. However, there has been reporting for OpenAI back in October and Anthropic in December about them planning IPOs. In OpenAI's case, late 2026 to early 2027, and then Anthropic sometime in 2026. And my 2026 prediction is that they will, in fact, basically have a race to IPO first before the end of the year. And that will have a big impact on our economy. There's a lot of big questions around how the IPOs will go for these companies, because these are some of the biggest IPOs of all time. SpaceX is also in this category, although they're not an AI one,
Yeah.
and would be even bigger. So valuations wise, SpaceX I think was looking at 1.5 trillion. OpenAI would be 1 trillion valuation, and then Anthropic is 300 billion. And I think even the 1 trillion would be like one of the biggest IPOs of all time, if not the biggest. Because normally companies go public long before this, and there's just these are some of the companies that have been staying private much longer, planning
Yeah.
IPOs. So there's a lot of questions. The first article that I linked here from the information is about banks working on planning these IPOs and trying to figure out just like how to structure them such that they don't crash the stock price with everyone trying to get out immediately. So like the way IPOs usually work is that if you're an insider who owns stock already, early investors or company employees and executives, you cannot sell your stock for 90 to 180 days after the IPO, basically. So
Mhm.
there's a period of time in which the public people can get in and buy stock, and then people sell later after it has sort of like all sorted itself out to some extent.
Yeah.
And so what an IPO usually involves is you work with the bank goes around and like sells your IPO to big institutional investors who take most of the amount of stock that you're going to sell in the IPO, and figure out like what price you're putting it at and how much they're taking. And there's a whole bunch of negotiation that goes on there to figure out like what price your initial IPO is.
Mhm.
And a lot of time they try and set that like slightly lower than what they think it will go in the public market because it looks bad if your stock doesn't go up immediately.
Yeah.
But also because these big investors that you're working with want to see some like benefit out of it. So like they talk about an IPO pop, which is you get your thing at the initial IPO price, and then when the actual like public market investors who didn't get their initial allocation buy in, it goes up immediately. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff discussing, but in this case, it's going to be like much more stock held by insiders and much more demand for these than is standard in like any existing IPO. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions about how to sort of design that IPO structure in a way that doesn't immediately crash the stock, basically.
Yeah.
And it's not clear how they're doing that yet. So that'll be interesting. All of that is reporting what has happened. My personal prediction is that Anthropic and OpenAI are doing a carefully negotiated race here, because notably the OpenAI will do it late this year to early 2027 was reported before. The Anthropic is also considering the IPO thing. And the Anthropic reporting was also they're considering it slightly sooner than OpenAI is, which I do not think is coincidental. I do not
Mhm.
think this reporting was accidental. I think people are
No.
leaking this to get some sense of what the public response to it is, and also to disclose it to their competitors and put some pressure on them in that sense.
Yeah.
Um, and whoever does it first is going to like get the benefit of being able to figure this out without being judged against anyone else, basically.
Mhm.
So, and then if you come second, then you basically have to deal with like the overhang from whoever did it first, and whether good or bad.
Yeah.
um, so yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, because like, yeah, it is interesting. I guess like in terms of like both of them doing it, like especially in very close, like very closely, like one after the other, it does then kind of like then raise this question of like, you know, who of like lay investors of like people who are just like I'm going to put this in my Vanguard account or whatever, like is there like kind of a preference among those sort of
Mhm.
people for OpenAI versus Anthropic? Because I feel like you are going to have some people who are going to have a preference. I feel like there are some people out there who are like, I will not buy OpenAI, but I will buy Anthropic. Which, like, for those people, I don't think it's going to really affect who kind of gets first past the post here. But then you have people of like, oh yeah, it's like I have this much money and I want to invest in an AI
Yeah.
company, and yeah, and for those kind of people, yeah, I think it is going to be very significant who hits first because like those kind of investments will likely then go more to whoever winds up in that initial, like that first IPO, the initial public offering.
Yes.
But yeah, so it's like somewhere in the back of my brain, I'm a little bit curiously like, if this belly flops really terribly, is this going to be like the beginning of the end of the AI bubble. Because I don't think it would totally just nosedive. It's like I don't think there's any kind of world in which that really happens. But like we do have to consider that a lot of the valuation that these companies have, a lot of the reason why they are so highly valued is because of these, like as we've talked about previously, this sort of like startup venture capital investing. And while on the one hand, like, lay people investors will probably want to follow that because it's like, oh, well, if, venture capitalists think this is worth a lot of money, then, I'll put my money there too. But um, there may also be like kind of people who might normally invest in a company who, to the point of like this very, very sort of heavy partisanship in the AI debate, might in fact like aggressively shy away from AI because of the fact that there's a lot of speculation around it being a bubble. And is that essentially would that be significant enough? Would the impact of like it not attracting those investors who might normally invest in like an IPO of this caliber? I feel like to even get a sense of how it would behave, it's like you would need an IPO from a company that's representing a technology that has that very like it has very polarizing public views on it. Because yeah, it's like I don't know if we've ever like, I mean, this is me not speaking on a basis of research or anything, but like, when did we last have, an IPO of something of a company that represented a technology that people speculated was a bubble, pretty much, like, and when did we last have an IPO like in the middle of that bubble, and how did it behave and what happened there? Because I feel like that's like
there's got to be some .com ones.
There's got to be some .com ones. I don't know them off the top of my head, but also I feel like .com, like although that's like something we can compare to in terms of like the hypothetical bubble, I feel like .com wasn't quite as polarizing as AI is, and so it doesn't have like that element of it. And I feel like the polarizing element of AI as a technology, I would say that's probably going to influence how these IPOs perform. I feel like that's kind of somewhat novel in terms of an IPO, like having an IPO for a technology that, lay people have, like they either love it or like there's a bunch of people who actively hate it.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like going back to something you said earlier, like I do think there's a lot of demand, like generally for investing in a big AI lab from retail investors and like public market institutional investors.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the polarizing thing of AI, but it's like even that being super big, the question is like, is that demand greater than supply of stock from all of the people who are already invested in it, which is like hundreds of billions of dollars. Venture capital firms and big private market investors. And so that's sort of like the big thing in terms of like, what do the lockup schedules look like and what is the release period? Like some of the stuff in this article is talking about like doing weird stuff that has never before been done in an IPO, like keeping the lockup schedule secret so people don't know when big chunks of like the existing investors' stock are going to drop on the market, basically. Whereas if you knew that the lockup was going to end in 180 days or whatever, everyone plans on that, and therefore it has weird effects on the market and stuff like that. And then there's staggering. A bunch of things are like investors sell a portion of their holdings every 20 to 30 days. They can be triggered when the stock hits a certain price. Just like trying to figure out basically ways to stop the massive oversupply versus demand from crashing the stock price, basically. And that's assuming that there is like, or not even necessarily oversupply. I think there could be an oversupply, but just like the very large supply and the question mark demand.
I mean, like, because I think that's part of it. You're almost inherently looking at an oversupply. Like, I don't know, like it just like, like it, and then that's like inherently kind of just the bubble nature of it. That's like the question mark, like the question that I'm just like, I would really love somebody who has like, a good background on like IPO research to sort of answer that question of like, one, what kind of crash would we anticipate in an IPO of these two companies, and two, is there a possibility that the crash would be significant enough to like essentially pop the bubble and, it's like leave a lot of these like investors sort of just, holding the hot potato as it were on like, all the money that they've put into valuation of these
I
companies.
think there's a real possibility of that happening, and that's why all of these bankers are trying to figure out how
Hmm.
to structure it such that that does not happen.
Yeah, yeah. Which is like, I don't know, like it just that's such an interesting thing to do, being like, this here's a thing that like, is behaving in a way that's very bubble like, but we're going to try and keep it from popping. And it's like, yeah, I don't know, like a soft deflating of the bubble or something, I guess is what they're aiming for. Um,
Mhm.
but but yeah, who freaking knows?
Or
That's
just like even
yeah.
extending the bubble long enough that
Yeah.
their
That
their actual like progress can catch up to the hype, I think, is also a thing.
mhm.
It's like that's
Yeah.
really the thing with a lot of VC things, and not even just AI, not even just bubble, is
Mhm.
you sell you sell way ahead of your actual product, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
You're selling the vision, and people are investing in the vision, and therefore your valuation is insane. And like at some
Mhm.
point, ideally, you catch up.
Ideally.
And actually deliver to the vision.
Yeah.
And ideally that happens like before you try and sell it to public market investors. Usually, the idea
Mhm.
is it's like when you're buying in the public markets, it's based on some actual like price to earnings ratio and things like that that are not just hype. But that's
Yeah.
I don't think that's not going to be the case in either of these IPOs. Neither OpenAI or Anthropic are going to be making a profit by the end of this year. So Anthropic has said they will be closer. I think they projected they'll be cash flow positive 2027.
Mm.
OpenAI has projected 2030, I think. Um,
Wow.
I've been spending hundreds of billions more dollars between now and then, so that's fun.
That's yeah, that's also wild being like, yeah, we're not going to be cash flow like we're teasing an IPO, but we're not going to be cash flow positive for another 4 years.
Hmm.
Like that's a very fascinating thing to say.
Yeah. Well, that in order to get to where they need to be, they need more money than they can get in the private markets. So,
Yeah.
um, and they want to allow retail investors to get in
On the
on
hype.
on the hype, yes, and
Yeah.
the winnings
Mm,
by it growing even more theoretically,
theoretically.
which like it
Yeah.
could do. Like
Mhm.
it is entirely possible that they could structure it such their lockup schedule is such that it doesn't crash, and they manage to carry over the hype into the public markets and keep it going.
Yeah.
And at the very least, I don't think either of these IPOs are going to happen early this year. So even if
No.
assuming that we hit a bubble popping thing, I don't think that's going to happen before very late this year / early 2027.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see who does it first and how that goes. Because you can
Mhm.
imagine a whole lot of interesting scenarios there. Where like,
Yeah.
okay, Anthropic does it first, and they're smaller, so that goes okay. And then OpenAI has to do it after that, and sort of live up to that. And like, do they follow the same lockup standards? And do they get less investment because all of the I just want to invest in AI, and I don't care who people are already in Anthropic,
Right.
like
Yeah.
or does OpenAI go first and it crashes? Then maybe Anthropic decides to not do it at all. Like, there's very different things that could happen depending on how this sequences. And I absolutely
Mhm.
sure that people at both of these companies are thinking of it in those terms of
Yeah. Yeah.
how does our IPO look in relation to this other IPO that we don't actually know when it's happening, but maybe before or after ours? And do we want to push ours earlier to try and beat them? Or do we
Mhm.
want to hold off and let them take the swing first? And
Yeah.
I'm sure those conversations are happening, and that this reporting on their potential thoughts are part of that also in trying to figure out how people would react to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be fun.
It'll be fun. Yeah, definitely like I don't know. I feel like not a thing that not an IPO I would buy. Not that I'm a person who buys into IPOs at all. I invest in index funds.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, it is one of those things. It's like I don't know. Like it'll be very unprecedented for better or for worse.
Yeah, so that's definitely it's certainly in the economic / finance world the thing that I'm
Mhm.
anticipating for 2026 is what are these IPOs going to look like, and how will they go?
Yeah.
Because I think that's going to be very interesting and will affect a lot of things. So
Yes, definitely.
yeah, didn't really talk about SpaceX at all. SpaceX is in here too. That's one of those where it's like
Mhm.
everyone wants to invest in Elon Musk though. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a cult of personality bubble.
I mean, SpaceX builds some real things. They're like the only people who are getting things into space at this point. But
No, yeah, it's true. They do build things, but I would argue that probably a good chunk of their valuation is just Elon valuation, for better or for worse.
yeah, or I mean, exclusive government contracts because
Yeah, because Elon made it that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a whole different thing, and I don't know as much about it as I do about OpenAI and Anthropic.
No.
We didn't discuss that, but notably, it's also a super big private market IPO. Maybe they'll do first, and that'll crash entirely, and OpenAI and Anthropic will decide against it. We'll both decide against it. I don't know.
Who knows?
But yeah, that's definitely a
Mhm.
thing that people are talking about. I think it will have a big effect on because we've talked about, is this
Mhm.
just trying to leave retail investors, the bag holders, as all of these early investors get out finally and just like dump
Yeah.
their stock into the public markets, which then crash. And
Mhm.
like ideally not, not for everyone's sake, I think. But like even the people who are trying to do this don't want that to happen because obviously
Yeah.
if it crashes, they can't unload all of their stock. And also they can't ever do that again.
Mhm.
Probably because people would be like, no.
Yeah.
But then how do they avoid it, and what kind of structures does that go in place, and what precedent does that set for the future?
Mhm.
I don't know.
It's it's definitely something to keep an eye on. It definitely seems like it's very complicated, and I'm definitely like I feel like I'd be more interested like seeing the perspective of somebody who kind of like studies market IPOs and understands sort of how these things generally behave and also like how they've behaved in unprecedented situations in the past, like the dot-com bubbles and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a bunch of articles on this, and the consensus seems to be nobody knows.
Yeah.
So, and everyone's kind of worried about it. So,
Yeah.
the other 2026 prediction one um,
Hmm.
is basically that AI backlash will shape the midterm elections, is the
Mhm.
headline of this information article. This is also one of Casey Newton from Hardfork slash Platformers 2026 predictions, is that people running on a basically AI backlash, AI safety platform would win congressional seats in the midterms,
Yeah.
which I think is likely. And
Mhm.
so there's a few people in particular that this information article talks about, and one person in particular that this other article that I linked talks about. And so one of the things that I thought was interesting before we get into the specific people is this what did they call it?
Super PACs.
A network of super PACs.
Ah.
So not even just one super PAC, but it's called Leading the Future, and it's funded by OpenAI President Greg Brockman and venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz. So some of
Mm.
our favorite people.
Our favorite people to talk about. Yeah.
Um, and basically, it's opposing state AI regulation and in favor of a national standard, et cetera, and like pushing back against overregulation of AI.
Mhm.
And so they have, in particular, raised like $100 million to fight against candidates who are trying to implement AI regulation. And one of the first things that they've done is a campaign ad already against this guy, Alex Bors, who is currently a New York State Assemblyman, and is going to run in the primary for a uh, congressional seat,
Uh-huh.
a House of Representatives seat. And he's like announced his candidacy. It's a pretty crowded field. Like he's not the only candidate by a long shot, but he
Yeah.
was one of the architects of the New York RAISE Act, Responsible AI Safety and Education, which currently passed New York legislature and is up for approval by the governor, I think, currently.
Mhm.
And has talked in specific about wanting AI regulation. Therefore, they've already released a campaign ad against him,
Oh,
despite the fact
geez.
that not even the primary isn't even till July, something like that. It's far.
Yeah. June. June. It looks
June.
like it's saying. Yeah.
Which is interesting. And he has a quote here that's talking about like I'd rather be on the right side of history and the wrong side of this pack. And I think
Respect that.
there's a lot a bit interesting about this guy. I originally clicked on this link because he is notably pro UBI,
Mm,
like explicitly as part of his talking about how we're going to handle AI.
yeah.
Because he's actually a fairly like positive on AI person overall. He's just like, we need to regulate it, and
Mm-hmm.
we need to put in stuff in place. He was previously apparently a software engineer at Palantir,
Hmm.
and he has a wife who works on AI at Microsoft. So he knows stuff about AI,
Yeah.
and based on that, wants to regulate it, like put in safety regulations, and also wants universal basic income, which is like that checks out to me because,
Yeah.
like I've mentioned, a lot of AI people who know a lot about AI both think that it needs some guardrails, and that
Mm-hmm.
it's going to need universal basic income because we're going to destroy the economy. But he's the first like actual like major political candidate I've seen say that. Someone
Yeah.
actually in politics, which I thought was
Well,
super interesting.
yeah, it's also super interesting, like kind of as we've discussed about this very weird, like not like hypocrisy, but just like the very like the weird point where there's a convergence in opinion between like very liberal people talking about AI and some of these like what we would perceive as very conservative AI advocates. Because like we've talked about in the past how it's like, yeah, you if you talk to Elon Musk long enough, he will admit that we need UBI, and it's like, it's like you talk to a lot of AI advocates long enough, they will admit that you need UBI, and yet here's their like PAC network, you know, taking out attack ads against the guy who's like, okay, well, we need UBI. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like interesting that you say that we need this, and yet you're not like, you seem to be opposed to the guy who's also saying it. But yeah, but I think it's definitely like the regulation that they're probably more upset about. But it's just like it's interesting that that kind of happens in the, you know, in the along that same vein of it. But yeah, I guess like the part of them like taking attack ads out on a guy in a primary, I guess like doesn't it isn't as strange when you consider that I think this district, as I was like flipping through this article, it is a very Democratic leaning district.
Yeah.
So basically, whoever gets the Democratic nomination from the primary is pretty much going to win the race. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like the only place that they like they can really insert people can really insert their opinion is on campaigning against him in the primary. And I do wonder if this might be like, especially for like this AI PAC network, if this might have something of a Streisand effect in terms of like, especially for New York, it's like we're in the era of Mamdani when it's like a PAC going against you is almost like he said, it's like it's a badge of honor. Like he would,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's like if the PAC is against you, then that's going to get the your rank and file Democratic voters to kind of perk their ears up a
Yeah,
little bit and be
I was
like,
trying to
oh,
find out.
hey, yeah.
There was somewhere in one of these articles talked about
Mm-hmm.
how he got the most individual donations thus far the day after the
Amazing.
ad against him came out. So yes, I do think there's some of that, which is like, oh, the extremely pro AI anti-regulation people don't like you. Great, here's
I
your
like
money.
you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is kind of like what I wonder might happen with this candidate in specific is that like, yeah, will, and especially, and also like with this, like, what is it, the leading the future super PAC or whatever, is like, if you guys start going after people in like these very democratic primaries, like, you're probably just going to attract the attention of very democratic people who live in that district who are like, oh, you think he's your enemy? Okay, cool. He is now my friend, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I would argue that like probably part of what helped like Mamdani's campaign is the fact that like so many conservatives were so afraid of him, and that
Yeah.
makes that makes liberals pay attention. That makes progressive perk their ears up and be like, oh, you don't like this guy? Well, maybe I'll look into him because if like I tend to like the things you dislike.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's very interesting. I'd be very like you said, like the him raising so much money after this ad is hilarious for one, but then two, in be very interesting to see how this is impacting his polling numbers in that race specifically. That seems a very stupid, like, battle to pick, because it is like, it is really Streisand affecting it. It is really like, if you had ignored this guy, or if you had, like, funneled money to, like, just give it to one of his like, because there's like a Kennedy in this race or something. It's like there's a lot of people going out for this this seat that he's up for, and it's like there's lots of other ways to, like, kind of put your finger on the scale, but you did it very specifically in a way that said not this guy, and I feel like that's just going to backfire in a very solidly Democratic district. So it's just kind of like, interesting, very interesting, the political steps that you guys are taking, and how much they're really, like, showing their hand in terms of, it's like what these people don't want to see happen. So yeah, that's wild.
The other sort of interesting aspect of all of this, I think, is that, like, it's AI safety is not necessarily like a partisan issue, in the sense that it's not like Democrats are pro AI safety and Republicans are against it. Or there are many Republicans who do not want that to be the case, because they do not want to cede all of the people who care about AI safety to the Democrats. That's the majority of the population. There's this Pew Research thing recently that shows that, like, more people are worried about AI than more concerned than excited, and proportion has been going up over the years and is now 50% more concerned than excited, 30%, 38% equally concerned and excited, 10% more excited than concerned. So people are worried about it, and they generally want some kind of guardrails on it. So if you're trying to do the no brakes, all gas AI, that is not the majority of the population. So you're going to lose, probably. Not even just in a heavily Democratic district, but in general. Which is rough, because, like, Trump and David Sachs have been all gas, no brakes. And so the Republicans are having to sort of carve out okay, but we actually, like, care about child safety, like, in particular, because that's always the hottest button.
Oh yeah, that.
And we don't necessarily want these AI companies to create, like, rabbit holes that induce psychosis and make people take their own lives. Like, that's not a thing that we want. That's not a thing that you want to be pro, even if you're a Republican, probably. So there's going to be a lot of that, I think, and that's good. And then, of course, data centers in your neighborhood is a big issue in a lot of places too. So and especially when that gets down to affordability, where it's just like, well, if this is going to make our electric prices go up, then that's a really substantial portion of our monthly bill, and, like, we don't want that, and that's not partisan either. So, like, that kind of stuff, I think, is going to make it be a interesting issue to see how people play in the midterms.
No, yeah, most definitely. It's like there's a lot going on there. And it is a difficult position for Republicans to be in, where the majority of people are like, we want AI protections, but the, figurehead of your party is incredibly, like, kissing up to every AI company in the world. Not even on just, like, AI specifically. It's like the Republican Party in general has sort of, like, positioned themselves as the party of anti-regulation. And so it's like, for an issue like AI, where people do want more guardrails and want more regulation and want more safety and protections, to be like, okay, no, like, we don't want regulations to impede business except for here. It's this weirdly, like, contrary to their some of their core messaging. And so, as much as Republicans might not want to politicize the issue of AI regulation, it is an issue that, because they have politicized regulation broadly, and their party line has come down on the side of less regulation rather than more, for Republicans to come in and it's like, oh no, wait, we do actually want regulation on this thing specifically, is a harder needle to thread, I feel. So
a lot of the way they're doing it is protect the children.
Which we've talked about that extensively on this podcast, protect the children. So
yes,
alas,
they thread the needle via children don't have rights. So,
Mm-hmm.
which they do. Children have rights, by the way. But
yeah. By the way, kids do have rights. And by the way, a lot of the ways that you're trying to protect the children, quote unquote, is not actually protecting the children. I don't know. It's definitely it's like a complicated issue. I think it will be interesting to see how these PACs that have formed specifically for the intention of like fighting against candidates that are pro regulation in the AI market. It'll be interesting to see like what influence they have over voting and over like polling. This is such a weirdly multi-layered issue because it's like, one, we're dealing with like pro versus anti-regulation, which is a very partisan issue. But then two, kind of what we're also dealing with is the public perception of super PACs, which is something that like over the years has become very much like, you know, kind of a progressive and a liberal talking point. Like a lot of Democratic candidates like to brag about how many of their donations come from like, you know, $1 or less than $5 donations. And a lot of them like to, you know, like it's a popular progressive sort of like platform to say I'm not going to accept any money from PACs at all because, you know, Citizens United is one of the things that's kind of gotten our country where we are right now. So it's like there's that piece of it as well. And that's not even touching on the public opinion of AI. So it's like just these multiple different layers of this issue. And in my opinion, on all kind of sides of it, anybody who's coming out in favor of AI regulations is just going to be inherently kind of in that democratic progressive camp because of all those things. And anybody who these PACs are going to go after feels like they're going to attract the attention of a lot of like progressive voter blocks. And it is one of those things where it's like, yeah, like I look at Mamdani winning the New York mayoral election and I'm just like, is this kind of going to start backfiring on you guys? Is the political atmosphere such that like large PACs funneling money into a race is just kind of throwing your money away because the inherent act of moving your money through a PAC to certain voter bases turns them off of a candidate because of the fact of how people like react to PAC funding and all that sort of stuff. I've been saying, you know, since last year that and I think that the results that we're seeing from special elections are bearing this out, that 2026 is probably going to be like pretty blue. Like the midterms are probably going to be pretty blue. There's a lot of signals indicating this. So,
I hope so. I agree so also, but like,
yeah.
have no confidence in anything at this point, but
I have confidence in a lot of the signals that are in the political atmosphere right now. It's like there are like a lot of like swings that we've seen in like again in special elections, and I think like a lot of how people are mellowing on Trump's administration and a lot of the actions that they're taking, and you know like approval ratings and what have you. So I think it is like. There is indications of a blue midterm coming our way.
One of the interesting stats here was like the RAISE Act that I talked about. Apparently 84% of New Yorkers supported. Like
that's a lot.
Passed with a strong bipartisan. Which is like that's a lot, and I think it is true that like the majority of people support that kind of regulation, and so to the extent again that like Trump and the figurehead of the Republican Party is against that. They are making the life really difficult for all of the down ballot Republicans. Figure out how to navigate that. Good.
Oh, and I did want to say because this article it looks like came out in December. It does look like the governor did sign the RAISE Act.
Oh, good.
So that's actually in effect now.
Yeah, and it's like. It's an extremely reasonable piece of legislation. It's basically like the big AI companies have to have safety standards and they have to follow their own safety standards and they can't like hide if serious and dangerous things happen. Just like who's against that?
It's like it's a very reasonable approach. It's very like makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it does look like the governor did because I was reading the article and it's like it looks like she had till end of December. And it's like that's passed. She's probably signed this and she has. But yeah, like this is such a popular position to take, and it's a position that does feel due to how Republicans have set up their platform, like just an easy position for Democrats to go and be like, that's our position, not your position. It's like, it's going to be hard for you as a Republican. Like, you're fighting an uphill battle essentially as a Republican to position yourself like on the right side of the polling when it comes to this.
Yeah, but like more than in some other cases, there have been some Republicans who have taken the pro-regulation stance on it. I think they have quotes like DeSantis said that.
Oh yeah, DeSantis. Yeah,
and
I
Steve
saw
Bannon
that.
is against it too. So like there's a split in the party there for sure.
Yeah,
which, like, again, is reasonable because like Trump is ruining whatever populist credentials he has here by being like, actually, I'm here to help out all of the big AI companies,
right,
and not what everyone in the country actually wants. So
yeah, which is why like DeSantis coming out against it and all of those sort of things does feel very much like that, like Republicans who are trying to start the uphill battle against what their figurehead is saying, and whereas Democrats can just kind of more easily just be like, no, we're against this, and it's, you know, it's like we're against Trump's stance on AI, and it's just kind of a clear-cut picture there.
Yeah. So again, like Alex Bors is like, it's not like he's against AI in general.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's just pro AI regulation. But yeah, like, but I think like one of the other points I was going to make, part of why that creates a problematic platform for them is because the fact that it's like, okay, cool, you can say that on the campaign trail, but like once you're in Congress and, you know, the president says, hey, you have to agree with me, what are you going to do? Whereas like Democrats aren't faced with that sort of like moral quandary of the Democratic stance seems to be largely pro regulation of AI.
So, I mean,
so
Trump has already tried to get the federal preemption of state AI regulation slipped into a couple of different bills at this point, and got killed like 99 to 1 in the Senate in one time. I think it's going to be more difficult for them. It just, more than some other issues, there has been some ground staked out here to not be aligned with Trump because everyone can see that it's a bad idea politically for them, also in general, but politically for them in particular.
yeah.
All right, yes. So this last section is a little bit different, and it's me just reserving the section to talk through some stuff about how I think about capitalism. But also some learnings from working in Amazon retail in general. So I, as you know, worked in Amazon retail in personalization for a long time. In particular, I worked on sort of a personalization platform team for a couple of years, and then I worked on the item similarities team that does customers who bought, also bought, and all of those related features for like 5 years. So overall, that's like 2007 to 2016-ish. And there's a lot of interesting things that we learned, like just that were institutional learnings on how that kind of stuff worked that I learned in the course of that affect how I think about a lot of things. So I've been thinking about that lately, and I want to talk through some of it. So in particular, if we're talking about item similarities, so this is basically like you're looking at a product on the Amazon website and you want to see similar ones, either similar in what we called the complementary sense, which is like other things that you would buy along with it, or similar like replacements that are the same product but slightly different. So maybe you want to buy them in place of that one. And you can think about at the like highest, most abstract level, ways that you could do that kind of thing on a website. One, editorial. Basically, a human person goes in and decides what things go with the thing, and that, like every single product that exists, or whatever, or whatever like small set of products that you have. If it's a small set, you could do it manually. Like when Amazon was very early, people did this for books. They had like a lot of human editorial marketing there. Two is sort of like content based, which is you look at the actual attributes of the item in your catalog and you try and look at the things that are similar or have some sort of logic around like what things go with what other things. Like maybe you have a toy that takes batteries and you want to suggest batteries with it. That's just like a rule that you have. Or you look at like the attributes of televisions and are like, here are some other 60-inch televisions, or like that kind of stuff. And the third one is sort of like behavior based, which is what we worked on, which is basically customers who bought also bought, which is like looking at customer behavior and seeing, okay, people tend to buy these things together. And there's like a bunch of statistics around that, but like figuring out either they buy these things together or they look at these things together as they're comparing them, or even in some cases they look at these things and then they ultimately buy this one. And so we think like of this set of like comparable things, this one is the best because this is the one that people usually buy after comparing.
Mm-hmm.
And like the high level learning from early Amazon is that last thing works the best almost all of the time, or it did
Mm-hmm.
at the time. I will caveat this with like, this is all before like current AI and more semantic understanding of content and stuff like that. Maybe it can do better now. Not on Amazon currently, and I don't think they're doing much of that right now. I think they're mostly just doing sponsored products, but like in
Mm-hmm.
general, this is from, again, 2016 at the latest. And that's because you can get a lot of sort of like wisdom of the crowds in there.
Yeah.
People will go and look at all of the information themselves and they will make decisions and they will have access to information that you don't necessarily have when you're just looking at catalog data, or that any human editorial person is potentially not going to have. There's still arguments about editorial being better in some cases because the editorial person knows better than people in aggregate, but especially when you're talking about the scale of the Amazon retail website, that's really hard to scale. So
Mm-hmm.
basically the sort of behavior based thing worked really well in terms of like showing the things that people wanted to buy, and also just like qualitative feedback that people were like, yeah, this is cool. I know a lot of people who did like those features a lot when they still existed on the website in any form. And like there's always some fun examples there. I put some here. The funniest one that came up multiple times when I was looking for examples on the internet before this was VR headsets and fleshlights or lube came up a lot, which is perhaps not one that you would editorialize,
Nope.
but it came up a lot. There's also favorite ones with, as a cosplayer, is always fun when you go look at a piece of item of clothing and you see a couple of other accessories in there that make it very clear what costume the person is putting together. I
Yeah.
saw an Aquaman one in there. There was also like you're looking at a lab coat and you're doing Rick from Rick and Morty, and just like
Mm-hmm.
has the
Mm-hmm.
T-shirt and the whatever else. Not these things are not marketed as part of a costume. They're just like items on the website, but enough people are buying them for that specifically that's the frequently bought together that happens.
Right. Right.
Which is always funny and fun. And then there are some pitfalls of that too. VR headsets and fleshlights arguably being a pitfall because you do get some ones like that. There was another one that was like grow lights, kitchen scales, and tiny plastic bags.
Oh yeah.
It's just like those are all perfectly innocuous items.
Yep. It's like don't buy them all in one place at the checkout kind of thing. Yeah. But at Amazon, you don't think about like there being a checkout person looking at your bag, but there is, sort of thing.
Yeah, and like this is in the aggregates. Like enough people are doing that it comes
Yeah.
up in the statistics.
In the data. Yeah.
But then also like there's some other pitfalls here, which is like once you start showing these things infrequently bought together, people see those and they keep buying them. So like there's a feedback loop effect where like
Yeah.
if something gets in there wrongly, it will just self reinforce. So a lot of the work that we did for our on-call rotation on the team was like stock list bad pairings that came up and frequently bought together. And some of that was just like, okay, this is a queen size mattress, but it is paired with a king size sheet because like that wasn't really clear the size in the title of the product and people bought it mistakenly enough times that it got into frequently bought together. And now it's never going to get out again because everyone's like just like purchase.
Yeah.
Because they trust it is representing like the real thing and it's not necessarily. And if people don't have the access to like clean product data to make the decisions in the first place, if it's confusing, then the results will be confused. And then there were some that were like actually illegal that came up occasionally. The big one there being nitrous oxide in balloons in the UK. Because nitrous oxide now in the UK is like just fully illegal restricted substance, but it used to be that you could own it, but it was illegal to sort of like sell or market for recreational purposes. And if you, for example, have a nitrous oxide tank and you say frequently bought together balloons, that is implying that it is for recreational purposes, because you just like, you take the tank and you put some in the balloon and then you take it for recreational purposes. So that was literally illegal. And we could have like legal action taken against us if that was shown, which it did sometimes. So we stopped that. So all of this was very interesting, but also is an allegory for capitalism. In the sense of like, I do believe in the wisdom of the markets, in the sense that like, in the same sense of like the wisdom of the crowds works here, to some extent. In the sense of like, if you give people enough information and the ability to make good decisions and you aggregate those in an intelligent way, you can get better results than like any individual one person who's making a decision. Those are some prerequisites, though, that are not always there in our capitalist markets as they currently exist. And then also there are still failure cases that you need to guard against, where if something goes badly, it will be self-reinforcing and you need to like be able to kick it out and stop that and things like that. So yeah.
Well, like if the data that the people are using to make the decision is not in fact fully complete or fully accurate, then yeah, you're going to wind up with these failure cases where people incorrectly buy like the wrong things together, sort of thing.
We may have even talked about this, was related to like health insurance is always the one that I think of a lot, which everyone's like, the free market, and if the insurance is bad, people can go to a different one. And it's like, first of all, no, they can't. Just like logistically, a lot of the time, they just don't have the options. But second of all, there are a lot of reasons why a person might not spend many hours of their day figuring out the minutia of comparative health insurance plans, especially if they're in a situation where they really need it, because they're dealing with a bunch of other stuff.
Especially like, insurance is a great example, because in the insurance market, everybody's making decisions without complete information. You're in your head, whether you realize it or not, making an estimate of, like, do I think I'm going to need hospitalization? How many prescription drugs do I think I'm going to take this year? How many times am I going to go to the doctor? And likewise, the insurance company is making an estimate of, you as a patient and that same sort of information, which is how they're setting like their premiums and deductibles and all of those different pieces. So that's like very much like a key integral part of how the insurance market operates, is the fact that everybody in that market is operating off of incomplete information. So
I mean, I would even take that a little further. It'd be like, everyone has incomplete information, but the insurance company has way more resources
they do
to get more accurate statistics and to measure those risks than the individual person does, both in terms of just like availability of information and time and ability to like run calculations. My overall point is like, there is both something to be said for the free market. But B, there are a lot of things to caveat that with. And especially, I was reading this whole article on like what went wrong with capitalism. I may have mentioned this before. And like the one thing that it didn't touch on that I feel like is really important in what went wrong with capitalism is sort of like the hyper optimization that technology allows to happen, but mostly only on the production side and not the consumer side. So you end up with these really like hyper optimized for profit systems on the production side, and not really the ability for the consumer to make the appropriate decisions. Like, because there's information overload. There's like a scarcity of time, and just like people are not making, even to the extent that the information is theoretically available, the best decisions in every single purchase they make in their life. Like, not by a long shot.
And I feel like that, to that point as well, it's also very interesting that like a lot of the stuff that I've seen that has sort of like tried to address that gap just dies. It's like, because I'm thinking about like how I want to say it was like Mozilla Firefox for a while had a feature where if you went to Amazon and looked at a product page, it would tell you how good the reviews were, essentially. Like, it would actually like look at the reviews for the item, so how many of these are coming from like confirmed purchasers, but actually kind of like adjust the review grade for the item based on that kind of more aggregate information. So it's trying to provide the consumer with an additional level of detail that would help them make a more informed decision. But that feature isn't in Firefox anymore. And I think they just said it wasn't a profitable thing for them to do. And so it's like where capitalism like fails the proletariat because it's like, what's going to make the most money is always going to be the thing that's best for the company that is making money. The reason why we don't have a lot of these very strong sort of like consumer focused, like, let me help you decide on what to buy, like what is the best laptop for you. There's not as many of those around because one, unless they're taking commission, they don't really make a lot of money. And two, like those things get perverted so quickly because companies want to sell their product through these channels. It's like as soon as you have a channel that's like ostensibly like, I am helping people decide what to buy, a company wants to sell ad space on that. Essentially, it's like they want to have sponsored products on there, and then it's not incentivized for the person providing those recommendations to not accept that money. They're not going to make more money by not doing sponsored products.
Like, this is why this is super interesting, because like this is stuff that has happened in the last 20 years even, because talking about customer reviews, even specifically, customer reviews on Amazon was extremely controversial when they put them on there initially. They're like, you're going to let people put bad reviews on your website? Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you let people say bad things about the product that you're trying to sell? Like, that's a terrible idea. Why would you do that? Because nobody had done that before. And Amazon was like, no, like, we want to like earn customer trust by giving them the right information to make the decision, and therefore we're going to do that and provide something that's useful to the consumer. And like in whatever year it was, like 2001, that they did customer reviews for the first time, that was compelling and did win them customers.
Yes.
And that just isn't the case anymore.
No.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that like you introduce a tool for winning customer trust, and then people were like, okay, cool, like how do I pervert the tool so that my product always wins, and then that degrades the like value of the tool, essentially.
And, like, having worked at least adjacent to the customer reviews team for some amount of time, it is just like a constant arms race of like trying to root out inauthentic reviews. Or like one of the big changes that they made while I was there actually was a change trying to weight the more reliable ones higher, such that the star rating was not just like a raw average. And that was like a big change, because obviously that's also less transparent. It's like saying we're using an ML model to get this 4.6 versus like actually just averaging all the reviews was a big announcement that they had to make. But the theory again there was to give a more reliable representation of like how good the reviews on it were. And there's a lot of work on like trust was a big thing, and trying to figure out how to judge how trusted a particular review should be. Like did a lot of work on that. Like that's a real thing that people did a lot of work on. And I'm sure there are still people trying to do good work on that. But I think as a priority, it has definitely fallen away. In the Amazon world in general, because they can operate fine without it now.
This is also like why I hate constantly chasing the profit margin. In the way that our companies are run today, it becomes then a difficult thing to justify when it's like, oh, here's my team that manages advertising that has a very clear path to profit, because like to your point, it's like we have just stacked margin on top of margin, and that's pure money, versus like it's difficult to draw the line between I have made our reviews more trustworthy and that has earned us X dollars. That line is super fuzzy and it's difficult to draw it. And so, like if you have the print money team and the make people trust us more team, like with our current capitalist society and what the current system encourages companies to do, they're going to put money into the print money machine more than they're going to put money into the people trust us machine. So,
and that's going back to my comment on like how technology allows us to hyper optimize it, I think. Because, like, that was kind of true always, obviously, but like
Yes.
we couldn't tell exactly how much anything was making us 50 years ago
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. So it was all kind of fuzzy. And therefore you
Yeah.
could equivalently make the argument that like we should do this thing versus we should do this other thing. Whereas now technology allows us to measure each individual transaction and hyper optimize it to the
Mm-hmm.
most precise
But
level
it
based on
doesn't.
profit. Based on
See,
profit.
but see, here's the thing. It doesn't, though. We think it does, but it doesn't. If technology could, in fact, tell us how each interaction, each transaction results in a dollar value, then technology would be able to tell us how improving customer trust on reviews would result in an impact to the bottom line, and it doesn't. It's a very insidious thing. That is one of the problems with current capitalism, is that like we have not in fact figured out how to like actually quantify everything, but we think we have, because there's so much stuff that we have data for, and and that data is so pretty and it points us in these directions, but like so many soft pieces of business like HR, like experiential knowledge of your employees, like employee happiness, like customer trust. Like there are so many different pieces of a business that are not explicitly quantifiable through an analytical engine that have completely gone by the wayside. You're biasing your decision-making process towards those things that are more easily quantifiable. And I feel like that is like the biggest blind spot of technology companies in this day and age.
Yeah, the thing that I always say, which only makes sense to people who are software engineers, and in particular machine learning software engineers, is capitalism is overfitted in the ML term. So if you're talking about an ML model, overfitting means basically like you're conforming too much to the structure of like the data that you have, your training data.
Yeah.
So you are replicating like artifacts of it that are not necessarily the actual outcome that you want. Because you're like hyper optimizing for this one particular case that you are looking at.
Yeah.
And that's why if you're training an ML model, a lot of the times you just like, you want to stop training early. Like that's one way to stop overfitting, is to just like not keep it running and learning the whole time and just like keep it kind of fuzzier. Or there are other ways to do it. Like those are real things in machine learning that people consider to avoid overfitting. And I think that's one way to think about what's happening in a lot of these systems. Is I also think about like YouTube a lot in terms of what effect it has on creators who are doing stuff. Because like the YouTube algorithm is incredibly optimized and it knows exactly like what things to show to what people. But that means if you're like a creator and you don't post for like 2 weeks, you get dropped out of the algorithm because it's like, nope, posting frequently is good. And it's like, generally, yes, but like on the individual level, we should probably allow people to take a week vacation sometimes.
Right. Because and generally on the individual level, if the channel that I'm watching takes a break because they're going on vacation or something, I still want to watch them. Like when they come back, and YouTube's algorithm not giving them to me when they come back is in fact a failure of the algorithm. Because it's like, I do want to keep up with this channel when they return to recording videos. Hello? Like,
yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that, I think.
I do think the overfitting analogy is very apt, because I do think how companies operate in this day and age is very much overfit to the KPIs that are quantifiable. And it's like, and we have just left in the dust everything that doesn't have a number assigned to it. And there's a lot of really important things in how a company operates that don't have numbers assigned to them.
Yeah, and that's why I think an important factor in talking about like what broke capitalism is the ability to measure those things that we can measure that finely. Because like, given that ability, it now does that, because that's just kind of what capitalism does. Whereas previously, before, we couldn't do that, and therefore like we had to have sort of like the fuzziness across all of the factors more or less equally. So I think that's a adverse case. Failure there, and a reason why we need to have a little bit more guardrails / baseline socialism.
Or even just like, I don't know, like if somebody goes to a CEO with a proposal that's like, well, this might not necessarily have like this very direct ROI line that I can draw in an
Mhm.
equation and point to. It's like, that doesn't mean it's a big idea. It's like DEI is one of those things. Company culture is one of those things. You can't easily quantify those things, but there actually is a lot of like qualitative research that shows that they have a positive impact. It's just
Yeah.
that it's a diffuse, it's either a diffuse impact, or it's an impact over time, or it's just like things that, like, it's like you're not going to immediately be able to look at a graph and see a line go up. And I feel like that, I feel like that's just kind of the problem with a lot of how people run companies these days, is they just like want to look at a graph and see a line going up, and not
Yeah. And
everything's
like,
like that.
and again, like in my early days at Amazon, there were a lot of projects that people described as just like strategic product projects,
Mm-hmm.
basically, which was like some executive somewhere was like, I think this is a good idea. There's not
Yeah.
necessarily data for it yet, but we're going to try it because I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I think we'll be able to see good effects from it at some point. But again, it's just like as things go on, it becomes harder to justify those. Like we
Yeah.
mentioned before, early in Amazon, we also said like customer trust is our most valuable asset. And therefore we don't want to lose that, and we will lose money in order to not lose customer trust, which is a great principle to have, but especially as the company grows and you get down to like the levels where people are making individual decisions based on their team KPIs, it's like it's real hard to come there and say like, I think customer trust is more important here, when they're like, I think $1 million is more important here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what do you
Yeah.
do? I don't know. Yeah. And to bring my analogy back, it's just like, okay, we had this algorithm that was customers bought, but we also had a customer service line where we got tickets from people every time that they saw something weird or that they didn't like, and we individual humans looked at it and either just like put in a manual intervention to stop a thing that was bad, or figured out how to change our systems such that they work better for that case.
Yeah.
Because that is a thing that you need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
The other big one that we worked on a lot and never really solved, and I think is probably just not solved at this point, was the reseller issue, which
Mm.
is you would look at customers who have also bought on your 60-inch television and see a bunch of other 60-inch televisions and be like, who in the world is buying three 60-inch televisions at the same time? And the answer is someone who's a drop shipper or a reseller
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
just buying televisions and then reselling them at a higher price. Um, so and that happened a lot. So we tried to basically like take those people out of the data entirely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, because your data is imperfect, and you do need to kind of come in and massage it a little bit
Yeah,
and
and
fix it.
based on real human perceptions of what a good result is there, right? Just like
Mm-hmm.
there is also the argument that was made sometimes of like, okay, but if most of our customers are resellers, maybe they want the three televisions frequently bought together. Maybe you could
Maybe.
maybe.
Yeah, like, was it like we ran into that when I was working at Magic, we were looking at Wizards of the Coast. We ran into that because what the site that I worked on was Secret Lair, which was these limited time drops of like custom art Magic cards. I at one point in time like dove into our customer data, and we had the same exact thing. It's like you'd have, normal people buying like one or two of these sets, and then you would have this like small number of these really crazy outliers buying like 20. And it's
Mhm.
like, that's a game store buying a bunch. And so, yeah, like the question asked, it's like, well, what do we do? Maybe we give the game store people a different place to go and buy, so they stop like muddying up our normal customer data. But yeah, it's like then that gets you into the question of, do you serve all the customers on the same platform?
Yeah.
Maybe, and that's I think why Amazon Business, like
Yep.
Amazon Business did spin
Yes.
up eventually.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say that's why Amazon Business exists. That's not the
Yeah,
only reason
yeah.
Amazon Business exists, but that's one
That's
reason.
probably one of them,
Yeah.
It's probably at
Um,
least one of the reasons Amazon Business exists.
because yeah, like then that's another strategic decision where it's like, no, we want our
Mm-hmm.
regular retail website to be usable by normal people and to make sense to normal people, and people will look at the three televisions thing and be like, this is stupid. Why is it like this?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
even if there's a perfectly good reason why it's like this, and that is the case for
Mm-hmm.
many of the people who are buying things because they're reselling, but
Yeah. Anyway, deep dive into very theoretical contemplations about customers and the market and all those sort of good things.
also just like trying to figure out what I think the fix for capitalism is, which I know we've talked about a lot, and I don't know
Yeah.
what the fix for capitalism is, but this is, I think, a good sort of micro representation of both some of the good parts and some of the bad parts in an understandable format.
Yeah, agreed, definitely.
But also just like formative to my opinions, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we've moved in a direction where it feels like we are incentivizing not the right things. And so how to get out of that, who knows? Maybe more regulations.
Yeah, I think some regulation helps. I mean, I always come back to UBI, of course, but
Of course.
I do think that could help in a lot of like second or third degree ways, because like if everyone is sort of like freed from having to care deeply about profits because that's how they live and can have some ability to put in their effort in the place that they just think is good.
Yeah.
That could help things a lot in general.
Agreed.
Yes, just like, I guess the question of how do we fix capitalism for me is like, how do we relax the sort of hyper optimization for measurable profit to some extent? And like,
Yeah.
because people aren't going to relax it just because they feel like it. So how do we like force that to relax a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know.
It is a difficult question.
Yeah.
And how do we stop chasing the line going up it's a difficult question. Because it is one of those things also where it's like, as an individual, it's like you want to continuously improve. Doing better over and over and over again feels good just on a personal level. But how do we take that aspect of like wanting to be better and detach it from this like weird, just like perverse incentive of like increase, profitability no matter what kind of stuff. I don't know. It's difficult.
Yeah. And even like on an individual level, is think of something like social media numbers, where it's just like, am I posting to try and get my view numbers to be the highest every single time that I do it? Or am I posting because I like posting and I'm generating like the content that I want to create? And there's a tension between those two things. And even if you really want to do the second thing, it's really hard to not see the numbers and be like, but I want numbers high.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure UBI would definitely not necessarily address that, but at least it might kind of like free people a little bit from feeling so shackled to like the success of like corporations and stuff like that.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Fast and Broken podcast. I'm Carly Rector, and if you'd like to support my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter at carlyrector.substack.com.
And I've been Teresa Kramer. If you want my voice on your products, you can visit my website at teresakramer.com.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, you can leave us a like or a review. It lets us know people are listening and helps more people find the podcast. See you next week.
Bye.